the Beatles, a band that needs no introduction, yet their story often goes beyond the surface. We all know the basics. 4 lads from Liverpool who changed music forever. But what lies beneath the surface of their fame? Enter Paul McCartney, the lead vocalist of the Fab Four, finally opening up to present the shocking truth behind the band's journey. Amidst the glitz and glamour, there were dark shadows of problems and troubles lurking. You know how we usually picture the Beatles, those iconic, clean-cut guys in suits who swept the world off its feet with their melodies? Well, there's another side to the story. Before they hit the big time, they were more like rebels than polished pop stars. Dingy nightclubs, leather jackets, and jeans. The Beatles weren't always the epitome of sophistication. They'd smoke, swear, and even munch on chicken between songs. But all that changed when Brian Epstein stepped in. He saw their potential, but knew they needed a makeover. Out went the chicken-eating antics, and in came the tailored suits and polished appearances. It wasn't an easy transition, but as John Lennon wisely put it, it was either that or continue with the chicken routine. Now, let's talk about their little-known initiation into the world of marijuana. It all started on a fateful night in 1964 when Bob Dylan introduced them to the green stuff. You see, Dylan was puzzled by their song, "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and its supposed reference to getting high. Turns out, it was a misunderstanding, but Dylan saw it as the perfect opportunity to introduce the Beatles to a whole new world. And let's just say that night ended with a lot of laughter and some lost notes that we'll never get to read. Ever wondered why most Beatles songs are credited to Lennon-McCartney, even if only one of them did the heavy lifting? Well, it all goes back to an agreement made early on in their careers. Brian Epstein, their manager, along with Lennon, proposed that any song either of them wrote would bear both their names. McCartney was cool with it at first, as long as the credit flipped when one of them was the primary writer, but as luck would have it, that never came to pass. So whether it was a solo effort or a collaborative masterpiece, it all ended up with the same Lennon-McCartney label. Now, McCartney's feelings about this arrangement are a mixed bag. Sometimes he's chill with it, seeing it as a catchy logo akin to Rodgers and Hammerstein. But other times, especially on songs like Yesterday, where he was the sole writer, it gets under his skin. McCartney even tried to switch things up after the band split, suggesting alternating credits. Yoko Ono was apparently on board initially, but then things took a U-turn for reasons unknown. But let's shift gears to a more serious topic: racial segregation. During a 1964 tour in the U.S., the Beatles encountered a shocking reality at the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, Florida. The audience was to be segregated, with black and white concertgoers kept apart. This didn't sit well with the Fab Four. John Lennon made it clear they wouldn't perform in front of a segregated crowd, even if it meant losing their appearance fee. Their stance paid off. The crowd was eventually allowed to mingle, and the Beatles took the stage. This experience left a lasting impression on McCartney, who later penned one of their most iconic songs, Blackbird, inspired by the civil rights movement. In March 1966, John Lennon unintentionally ignited a firestorm of controversy during an interview with the London Evening Standard. He boldly claimed, "Christianity will go. It will vanish and shrink. We're more popular than Jesus now. I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity." While this remark initially caused little stir in England, its republication in Datebook, an American teen magazine, incited a frenzy across the USA, particularly in the South. Misinterpretations of Lennon's words led to calls for Beatles boycotts, public record burnings, concert picketing, Vatican condemnation, and even death threats directed at the band. The situation escalated to the point where the safety of the entire band was in question. Following a frightening incident during a concert where a cherry bomb explosion was mistaken for gunfire, the Beatles made the decision to cease touring altogether. Unfortunately, Lennon's fate may have been sealed by then. Among those outraged by his statements was Mark David Chapman, a once devoted fan turned born-again Christian who later admitted in a 1983 prison interview that Lennon's words fueled his spiral of hatred, ultimately leading to Lennon's tragic death. Meanwhile, the Beatles courted controversy of a different kind with the proposed cover of their Yesterday and Today album. Initially, it featured the band posing with doll parts, intended as a provocative statement against the Vietnam War. However, concerns over potential record deals led them to swap it for a more conventional cover, though some copies with the original cover still exist as collector's items. Ever since the Beatles went their separate ways, there's been this persistent story blaming Yoko Ono, John Lennon's widow, for their breakup. The tale goes that everything was sailing smoothly until she arrived on the scene, convinced Lennon to ditch the band, and led him down a strange musical path. It's become such a common trope that any time a girl seems to threaten a band, cast, or team, she gets labeled the Yoko. But let's set the record straight. Yoko Ono isn't the villain in this story. Even Paul McCartney, in a 2012 interview with Al Jazeera, dismissed the notion, saying, "She certainly didn't break the group up. I don't think you can blame her for anything." McCartney pointed out that tensions within the band, particularly the rivalry between himself and Lennon, were already straining their relationship. Yoko simply provided Lennon with the push he needed to follow his own creative instincts. As for the Beatles' encounters with LSD, their first trip wasn't at a wild party or under the influence of another rock star. It was courtesy of a rather unconventional dentist. In 1965, during a dinner with John Lennon, George Harrison and their girlfriends, a friend Harrison described as a wicked dentist, spiked their coffee with LSD, presumably hoping to set the stage for some unconventional activities. However, the group left before feeling the drug's effects. Later, they started experiencing its profound impact. Harrison described a euphoric feeling, while Lennon had hallucinations, mistaking a red traffic light for a fire and believing Harrison's home was a submarine he was piloting. It's another odd chapter in the colorful history of the Beatles. The Beatles' influence on music and culture is monumental, to say the least. Their innovative songwriting, profound lyricism, and unparalleled musicianship have left an indelible mark on the world of music. Countless artists have drawn inspiration from their work, and their groundbreaking creativity paved the way for new recording techniques that are now commonplace. Yet, despite their musical genius, there's an intriguing fact about the Fab Four that often surprises many. None of them could read or write music. John Lennon revealed this in a candid 1980 interview with Playboy, praising Ringo Starr's drumming skills while admitting that none of the band members were technically proficient musicians. "None of us could read music, none of us can write it," Lennon confessed. Paul McCartney echoed this sentiment in a 2018 interview with 60 Minutes, emphasizing that while they lacked formal musical training, their instincts and creativity propelled them to greatness. The public's desire for a Beatles reunion was palpable the moment they disbanded. An almost reunion nearly occurred on April 24, 1976, during an episode of Saturday Night Live. Producer Lorne Michaels famously offered the band a meager $3,000 to perform just 3 songs on the show. Surprisingly, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were in New York City that night and even considered accepting the offer for the sheer humor of it. However, fatigue got the better of them, and they decided against it. It wasn't a matter of money or legacy. They simply lacked the energy. It's a fascinating glimpse into what could have been. The most sought-after reunion in rock history, nearly taking place on a comedy show for the price of a modest car. In the midst of their post-Beatles chaos, Paul McCartney and John Lennon briefly intersected during Lennon's Lost Weekend in the mid-1970s. Away from Yoko Ono, Lennon immersed himself in a whirlwind of drinking, drugs, and music in New York City and L.A., accompanied by his assistant May Pang. In 1974, Lennon bumped into McCartney at a Burbank studio, a surprise meeting that stirred up memories of their Beatles days amid their separate paths. Comment down below with your favorite Beatles song. See you in the next video.